the hanged king's comedy. The spiteful's torment shall permit gloom of power whence the world split, and black stars hate without relent. The king's pernicious game is spent. Failed usurper 10 trillion times, fueled by those two who sinned no crimes. So now my reign stands to begin. Anguish the court of strife and sin. Existence within my control, agony racking every soul. Thus I will feed the king his sin, to die till he can't die again. Thereafter I will take my throne, all flesh having been stripped to bone. All lives are pawns of the anguished kings, to suffer and die on my puppet strings. Of Doctors and Algata, by Gabriel, Jade, and Black Knife 09. 2 colleagues sat in the mansion's study, one man cradling a snifter of brandy, while the other drew on an ornate pipe. When his voice broke the silence, it was accompanied by a cloud of smoke. Rare of you to have your servants leave the room, Riddell. What fey mood has come over you? Pausing for several moments to down his brandy, Riddell produced a leather-bound journal from the breast of his suit. I have just this morning received, by way of courier, my newest purchase. An account penned by an inhabitant of the realm beyond the Janus door. His guest's eyes widened at that. It had been several long years since another clue to the arcane gate had been uncovered. Where'd you find such a thing? Erasmus leaned forward and reached out his hand for the book, obviously eager to read its contents. The host extended his prize, and his guest took it. Blind auction, by a Mr. Dark. It merely cost me my summer estate. Such a small price to pay, Erasmus agreed, carefully opening the journal. And from what manner of creature did this account come? A gentleman, cracked and fractured, if the merchant is to be believed. The man sought to open the doors from the other side, and traded away his journal for the reagents that he needed to activate his door. Riddell refilled his snifter with brandy from a decanter on the table next to his chair, then continued. Who's to say if the man found what he was after? Erasmus turned through the pages, desperate to read a first-hand description of the mysterious Algata. Finally, he found what he was looking for. The ever-twisting golden maze of endless facade and orgy was alight again with the joy screams of lust and sharp sadism. Beautiful scarlet flowers atop such wondrous garments danced doggedly with their hosts in an unholy display. And the dapper of a gentleman being lost in an impulsive fit of agony. These paved streets are a blessing to those who follow its vulgar dogma, and by the damn gods they do. The thirst of these delinquents on the streets has such a profound effect that even I, in a chosen existence of celibacy, have almost succumbed to the tainted pursuit of that abominable intoxicant. One would think, with the mongrels of the streets being so entangled with the social heights of degeneracy, they would have the skill of excellent banter. But, to the dismay of I, they even fail in that regard. Most of them are not able to hold a civil conversation for little more than a cluster of words, before they stumble off from a drunken concoction of poor ales and the drowsiness of reality. Lost in their twisted lusts, it takes little more than a blink of the eye to find one's inquiries either forgotten or ignored. Lost at the back of the mind, along with other interactions to fester in a sea of madness. These memories would never to enter the thoughts of that simple brain again, oft replying merely, Dost thou know I? To lack verbados on the resolution that both parties come to, aye, but neither know if that is true. For time is convoluted in its school of passing, and does not follow a simple path. It's twisting and contorting throughout our existence in this city realm. So the events are not unique to one time, and instead the correct question to the events is not when, but where. Waiting at one point for a lengthy period, one may find an old event, but not that this matters at all, as one's experience of this repeat is of that of one's first time. An extended stroll will find one with many memories of events they were not there to perceive. I walked past a clock tower near my abode, it towering above all below on the street in a golden excellence, displaying crooked hands aiming towards ciphers and digits. Each blank or passing moment displays a face on the clock, vastly different from the one a moment before, legitimizing its entire existence in a sea of disjointed instants. Yet, despite all this, my condition worsens. My hatred returns to poison within me. Anguish tempts me to plunge yet into forbidden lore to find the remedy. Even now I am drawing up preparations to make mine invasion to the library of cosmic speculation, wherein it is said the knowledge of all worlds are catalogued for the purview of the twisted court of sin. He read on for hours, consuming the thin book with his eyes as his host slowly consumed his brandy. Erasmus's eyes were wide when he looked up, but soon narrowed as his mind moved onward to the next hurdle. What guarantee have we his methods will open the gate? None. The scholar's tongue moistened his lips as he held the book open in his hands, slightly shaking from the tension with which he sat. Still, it's too grand of a chance to pass up. A library wherein one might uncover even a lost portion of the holy literature is worth any cost. Riddell nodded his agreement. His mind hid well its secret desires to search for texts more profane and powerful. I'm glad you agree, as I hoped to leave you the procurement of his required reagents. Erasmus nodded. A fair deal. Only the crackle of the flames broke the silence as he pondered the magnificence of the journey before him. Riddell was merely glad his guest had been so amiable to supplying payment. In truth, he had made the journey alone, once before, in secret, and at tremendous cost. He had spent months there, by his reckoning, before his rations had given out and he'd been forced to retreat through the door. How bitterly he had cursed when it slammed shut behind him! He never did uncover the knowledge he sought, though what he had found enticed him all the more. Rumors of men who had cast aside their mortality and overcome the great specter of death filled Riddell's mind. At last, he would have his second chance at uncovering the truth of those secrets within the court of the Hanged King. Pestilence in the Court of the Hanged King, by Gabriel Jade. His book. Why'd he give away his book? This one was sick, though he knew not with what. Heaving breast, the spent pleasure of her lovers, eyes unfocused. Something was wrong here. Something was wrong! What was it? Aberrations. Blood. Rough gyrations too near the sharp lip of a stone dais. That he knew how to fix. His claw plucked at a bag from his midnight plumage. A familiar snap, and his talons plunged in. Book! Where is it? It's always here! Always here! A frustrated caw burst forth from his beak unsolicited. The frenzied claws tear through the junk in the bag, tossing aside glass tubing, gauze, and forceps alike. How many times have I done this? The lucid thought found its way unbidden through his mind. His form slumped, permeated by the familiar taste of purposelessness and despair. No comforting leather touched his claw tips. Dejected, he pulled forth a fine needle trailing the length of black thread. The absent mind did not impede the practiced hand, and the woman's blood flowed no more. Still, his gaze lingered. Something was wrong with her, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Sick! He withdrew from the plaza and its orgy, afraid of this sickness. Cure! No cure, no book, no cure! His talons raked out, gouging at the walls as he found his way through the twisting streets to the hidden parlor, where came to rest the knowledge-seekers of Elgada. They saw him enter, eyes frenzied, black blood trickling from his abused claws. Let him see your journals and notes, said the one cloaked man to another, their bony masks and black garb unfamiliar to them, an artifact of their passage through the alchemy gate in London. You won't keep them. Does this often enough. He's harmless. Just let him see that you don't have what he's after. The oldest man quickly moved among the others, gathered and offered forth the small library in their bags. The atmosphere of wonder and jollity wilted away as the men watched the feathered black beast tear through their notes, crazed eyes testing every page. No one else spoke. the handful of foreigners watching with steady concern as the creature cried out, occasionally, "Book!" or "Sick!" They watched as he tossed the final book aside, with a noise of rage, and seemed for the first time to see the others in the room with him. "Dr. Ham?" The question croaked out from within him, his tilted skull regarding the doctors. "No, Dr. Riddell," the old man introduced himself, "and Doctors Erasmus and Ardeen. We have come from the city called London. These are all of the books we have with us." Riddell paused uncomfortably as the moment stretched longer and longer. "Sick!" he pronounced them at length, without seeming to realize it. They shifted, parting as he stalked about them. Sunken eyes, drops of black blood in pool of white. The only flesh within the skull steadied their masks. Aquiline beak inches from their eyes. The lavender in their masks shielded them from more than the foul vapors of the creature. "We only come here to study and do not mean any harm. We are men of science and medicine." "And God?" added the first man he'd introduced. "Indeed," continued Riddell. "Perhaps we could help you locate the book you seek? We have access to vast stores of books and—
"Book! Book! Not books! Book!"
Black creature interrupted. Its frustrated mind loosed a tremendous sigh, unable to shape the words it needed, unable to find the concepts it wanted.
"I have nothing to teach you. Gather your things and quit my abode! Quit!
Spittle flew, and Fury shrank his eye pits at each unwanted shriek. He lingered alone, choking on the solitude. His mind wandered once again to another world, chasing this name, him, Doctor. Yes, they called him that, and other things too. A number. But he had long since forgotten it. He stood. He felt in a daze, his eyes locked on his bony, avian claws, stained in a black so deep it seemed red. Transfixed, he lost himself in the haze. The burning smell of candles, the musky scent of old papers, the cloying odor of mold for a time was all he knew. At length, the doctor found himself ascending a stairway, reaching for his past. Was his book taken? Had he given it away? He cried out in a fitful "Caw!" and fell to his knees, rifling through his bag. Perhaps he'd just misplaced it? Desperately he dug, to no avail, collapsed on the stairs hundreds of meters above the marble plaza below. He briefly looked up to consider the writhing forms twisting their perpetual orgy.
Sick! But why? And how could I even go about fixing it?
His neck craned to take in the full view, the ground seeming for all the world to hang far above, or perhaps it was him looking down from on high. How many times had he read that book?
How long have I been here to forget it all?
He could tell not how long he sat on that stair, a wretched and unspeakable thing. He turned at length to the sound of bony footfalls from behind. The sight of a creature would have shattered the mind of a lesser creature. Perhaps it did break him, for he had no fear beholding such horror. Behind it, at the steps plateau, he glimpsed a hallway purest black. Above it, beyond and about, the zenith sky of the hanged king's court. Within it, tormented weeping, the seraph of the anguished Lord spoke. "The Lord of Black has heard your plea, his heart jet void of sympathy. The tome you seek, lost memory. The price you'll pay is your duty. Whether his presence and you will see the crux of all your surgery." And so they went, together, into the deepest black. In the shadow of the anguished lord, gracefully carved pillars lined the narrow onyx corridor. Few knew, even within the king's court, that this place existed. Fewer still came willingly. The petitioner walked the hallway, accompanied only by the taps of his footfalls, in the depths of his mind. And the horror that brought him here, it seemed, did not accompany those within this hidden passage of the anguished lord. Perhaps it was little more than a metaphor to begin with. He shook the thought from his mind and continued on. Still, the scant lucidity yet within him would not relent. Away for the first time in what seemed like an eternity from the writhing and the chatter of the city, he found himself terrifyingly alone with his thoughts. The robe of black feathers, these claws, this skull. Claw tips touched the ridge of his skull with a muted clack. Have I always worn this mask? He set off down the hallway again, quickly. Why doesn't walking ever seem to get me anywhere? Begone, diseased voice! The tortured thing screamed, but he heard only his pain cause. Doubling over, he frantically clawed at his unfamiliar visage, desperate to tear apart the thoughts from behind it. This hurts. Sick! Why can't I ever get this thing to come off? Die! Leave me be! Confused, pained wails and screeches echoed throughout the hallway, a symphony for the anguished lord. Trembling, wet with blood as red as midnight, it despaired that it did not die. It languished, terrified, knowing it was alone. And then it wasn't. The correct man approached, in a queer way that the natives of this nightmare city did, such that he was not there until he appeared, looking down at the tortured beast. If you weren't dying, he might have felt bad for it. Have you come here to escape death? Or are you just some mad beast caught in a trap? The man's porcelain cheeks fractured and snapped, tiny cracks adding to his crumbling form with each motion. His face had mostly fallen away already, exposing the hollow form within. His single remaining eye looked out precipitously close to the chasm that had swallowed its companion. Death. Death is no matter. The creature's pupils contracted slowly at the noise, until this newcomer was focused in his vision. But there is a sickness in you. I should know how to cure you! Its body rose as it spoke, and it stared at one bony talon, outstretched toward the cracked man. His other talon tried, now lamely, to rip himself free of the body he wore. Yet I've worn this nightmare mask in this damn city for... He paused, contemplating the very passage of time in this world, of four lords. His breath grew swift and ragged, his thoughts emerging as a small, fearful whimper of the enormity of the eternities he had been lost in the city of strife and sin. The black beast staggered a few steps down the corridor, which drew a derusive stare from the Elgotan native's artificially cyclopean orb. He appeared once again next to the staggering creature. His posture and position changed in the time that passed unseen between the seconds that elapsed. Speak for yourself, wretch. You seem every bit as sick as I am. It wasn't wrong, though. His condition had progressed to the point where he had to be judicious with his words, lest he lose his mouth. I'm not sick. No, never sick. You! Sick and cracked! It caught at him in distress. He ached, a man trying to remember a pleasant dream in a waking nightmare. But my book, I have been here without it for so long, I forgot the procedure! The raven-quilled healer took another dozen staggering steps before turning to face the man, who was watching his strides with contempt. You never told me your name, cracked man. It seems you already know it. What bitter irony that I cross paths with a doctor that can prescribe my name, but not my cure. What, then? Do you seek this book of yours and this shadow, a shadow? He appeared again, his hands folded behind his back, eye to eye with the beast, or at least as near as its beak would allow. If you had it, could you then free me from this pain and sickness? The porcelain shards fell from his splintering lips as he spoke. The yellow iris constricted the black beast's eye to a pinprick. I could. There is no doubt of it. The avian skull, covered with a hood of midnight plumes, turned slowly back to the direction he had been traveling in. Still, it is as though this place is without end. What resides here? Simple. What brought you here? The sight of terror that had led him to this corridor filled his mind again. Only in his memory, it seemed, could he see it clearly. He had only one word for it. Anguish. Anguish, the other agreed. Anguish, confirmed the walls as they melted away, seeming to turn all at once from black marble to inky acid. The anguished lord made his countenance to shine down upon them. From the void of pitch above emerged, as though from an immense distance, an alabaster mask. It glared down at them, impossibly large, twisted at once with sadistic glee and unimaginable agony. The lord's gaze stripped their thoughts, their egos, their very selves away, and twisted them like puppets. They both watched in horror as one of the beast's bony talons extended slowly out and tore open the cracked man's chest, fracturing porcelain with his touch like knives. It crushed the fragments of his body and reached into the man's very core, where the anguished lord had hidden his memory an eternity ago. His claw tips touched lightly against the familiar, comforting shape of his journal. The cracked man fell, twisted, and he hoped, dying to the ground. He felt his back crunch and splinter apart painfully as he struck whatever imperceptible force suspended them in the black void surrounding them. The doctor's mind sat there in his hands, almost afraid to believe it. His other talon reached up, pulling the covers of the book apart. The pages, the writing, the procedure. It all came rushing back, almost as though it had never left, as his hands turned frantically from page to page, needing no more than an instant for each to sear itself back into view from a long-lost pits of his memory. His purpose returned. He fell to his knees, withdrawing his tools from his bag, working fast to apply the cure he had spent so long unable to. His actions blurred the line between earthen work and medicine, piercing the broken and dying patient back together with a calm and determined claw. He didn't look up when the anguished lord drew so near overhead that its ink-black hate dripped into the fractured lines of the cracked man. Indeed, he had been wondering where he would procure such a rare reagent. He wasted no time filling the beaker he had made so long ago. By the time the doctor's mind found its way from the labyrinth into which it had stumbled, his body had finished the surgery without him. The cracked man stood, his sickness gone, though the black resin of the cursed lord's hate lingered between the repaired fragments of his form. Judging by the vigor which gesticulated, his pain was gone as well. He was holding the sneering mask, arguing with it. "You think what? That I would be so overjoyed at my treatment that I will offer you my very body in recompense? You tyrant! You demon! I will have no part of your schemes. I have my health, and you have my thanks, and those are all the gifts that will be exchanged between us." He flung the mask from his right hand. It reappeared in his left. He glared at it icily. It laughed at him, mockingly. It spoke, its voice dripped with venom. "You act as though you ever had a choice in the matter." The ebony tendril snaked from its mouth as the Lord of Black expressed his only act of loyalty to his hanged king. "None shall walk Elgata without a mask." Everyone wears a mask. The doctor sat in his chamber, reclined on a comfortable mattress, head propped on a stack of sad, deflated pillows. The sterile white linens were still tucked neatly in beneath him. He held his journal, the thick leather comfortingly familiar within his hands. He was reviewing his newest entries regarding his most recent patient, Succus domesticus. The disease was well established and progressed at rates consistent with his current models. Unfortunately, the poor thing had been euthanized before being presented to him. Still, it had ultimately only been a minor setback. There were sirens blaring in the hallways outside. That wasn't entirely unusual. The lights had flickered several moments ago. That was less usual. The far wall of the doctor's quarters began to corrode. That, most certainly, broke from the usual. Far from the side of the wall, he heard shouting, not rough, but dripping with honey.
"I'm coming for you, my love! I'll free you and we can leave this wretched place together!"
A male voice in a high falsetto. "These are my quarters, and I think I would rather not leave with you. Have you any idea how luxurious it is here?" Several swift blows knocked free the remaining melting material, revealing a person wearing an orange jumpsuit and a white porcelain mask. "You've gone and ruined the wall." He paused,
dispassionately regarding a fetid chunk of flesh sloughing off the visitor's arm to the floor. "And I'm fairly certain you've killed that man."
My love, my sweet, sweet love! Come to me. Hold me close. I missed your touch."
The body's trembling legs started shambling forward, its possessor locked in a tragic scowl.
"It took so long for me to find you. They secreted you away. The monsters. Touch me, my savior, my love. Touch one of the humans. Cure it. Cure it. Let me wear it, my sweet doctor."
The corpse's leg bones, more gelatin now than structure, folded on impact with the ground, in that unique way that a dissolving corpse does, arms and neck lolling weakly. The doctor closed his journal, dropping it gingerly into his bag. "Have we met? I get the feeling I would remember you." This black ooze, however, was interesting. He produced from his bag a flask made of a material which superficially resembled glass. Reaching down, he gingerly took a hold of the top of the head, angling the host's neck down and holding the flask beneath it to catch the secretions. He had never encountered something so elegantly destructive before. Certainly, such an exotic reagent could be used to further refine his cure.
"Don't you remember me, my love? Don't you remember touching me, holding me, gathering my fluids? We've done this before, my love. Don't you remember? It was the first ingredient to your cure."
The doctor froze, though whether this was to ensure none of the secretions missed the flask, or due to his mind hurtling itself through looking for a past it could not find, he couldn't tell. The flask contained the black secretions, didn't corrode. He wasn't sure how he knew it wouldn't. "If what you say is true, then this flask, I made it, did I? Have I studied you? Then certainly—" He let the head drop, hitting the ground with a sickening crunch. Standing, he quickly strode to his desk. Gingerly, he set down the flask. Then next to it, his bag. Out again came his journal. He pulled it open to the first, earliest pages. Looking for his records, looking to see what this thing said was true.
"My sweet genius, doctor. Of course you made it. You're a brilliant man, you know. Your cure?"
The corpse's voice box, surprisingly still intact, broke into an appreciative giggle.
"Your cure is most effective than you know, doctor. Just one patient. That's all I need. I asked most of the prisoners that had gotten out to hold off our jailers, but they are weak, and I fear we do not have long. You must act, and quickly, my love."
The voice changed, dropping into its more natural baritone. "You, outside, come in, now." The doctor stared, transfixed and horrified at his journal. He did not see the nervous woman enter the room, gingerly, so as not to touch the corrosive ooze still devouring the wall. Her nose was running. It always ran when her heart was racing. She stood timidly, her eyes jumping back and forth between the degenerating pile of her cellmate and the beautiful mask that knew how to save her. "Lie down, there, on the bed. Close your eyes and breathe. The doctor here. He will fix everything that's wrong with you." The woman complied. The bleeding falsetto returned.
"She's ready, my love. Look closely at her if you need to. She's sick.
If he heard, he gave no response. His racing hand turned the page, watchful eyes scouring the text. It had been ages since he had reason to refer this far back through his notes. There were detailed sketches and diagrams of the very flask he'd retrieved. This did not quell the biling rise in his gorge. He couldn't read a word of this head scratch on the page. It was his script, no doubt, but he couldn't make out any of it. Pages turned frantically until he found a part he could read. Gunfire, faint and muffled, retorted in short volleys. "Quickly now! You know everything you need, doctor! This woman is deathly ill! Tend to her!" The voice bubbled slightly. The delicate voice was beginning to go. There wasn't much time left. Desperation poured from his mouth, as thick as corrosive fluid. exhaustive details of pathology, symptoms. He'd turned these over ceaselessly in his mind for as long as he could remember, focusing again on the words. He scanned them for nearly a minute further before snapping his journal shut in frustration. Damn notes on his procedure. Nothing that needed refreshing. A long moment passed, and the journal fell once again from his fingers into his bag. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. His work does not wait. The gunfire retorted again, a bit closer this time. He studied his breathing, and cast his gaze over the woman lying, sick and trembling on his bed. He would need to work quickly to save her, and avoid interruption. MTF. Theta G. Surgical staff sent a single encoded message to command on date redacted. Missing portions assumed due to damage to Site 19 transmitter. Transcription as followed.
Say again? 035 in possession of an inanimate body. Seemingly immune. Secretion's majority of the task force have listened to several minutes of its voice. We are under heavy fire. Damn a lot of them. Got us holed up in here. The chance is to get the warhead.
An angel who has forsaken sympathy. Stars shine down on the first night. The congregation has gathered outside to sing joyously to the stars, their voices twisting together in acoustic pentamerism. 24 joyous bodies sang, their young and old together, though one was absent from their number. An angel from the stars has come to make their bodies right, tended his first patient this very night, and so they sang, gathered around a great fire, their limbs twisted in ecstasy, cast about a great tentacled shadow, as though the darkness matched their rapturous dance. This is the revelation of the star surgeon, which the inward-facing eye saw, resonant within my void. The forms did not fit inside word shapes, and must not be read if you are growing a soul. Blind is the one who does not speak aloud the words of this prophecy. Fumigant is the one who listens so that his eyes bleed. It is inevitable. It has already happened. Stars shined down on the second night. 21 happy throats matched the happy harmony, and lamented that they had too few arms. No one had entered the church, but those of the angel had beckoned to be cured and made right. None had left. A beautiful man from the congregation collapsed to his knees as the chorus climaxed, clawing at his throat, screaming that he couldn't feel his smoke duct. Eyes bloodshot, for the worship had never abated. His brothers and sisters drug him near to the church doors. Surely the doctor would fix him next. He had it really bad. On the day that the door opened to yellow and to red and to white and to black, the surgeon was made to see the void without, and with anguish undertook exile. He dwelt in the lands of Shalmaneser, son of Ashurnazar-Pal, 5 and 5-star lives, and all the smoke beacons he there made were 520, and the blind idiot world collapsed, and he dwelled in the lands of Zhao Ting Wang, son of Zhao King Wang, and the stars in the sky numbered 5 to the 555th power. Stars shine down on the third night. Thick black smoke pours from the building, but there is no fire hot enough to burn those who live in it with the stars. 16 congregants litter around the fire, their bodies exhausted from hauling wood from the nearby forest. Their lungs ache from singing. A young girl, only 5 to the first 0.75 years old, leads the next dirge. Her voice honey-sweet, the lament with cherubic tones as her bleeding fingers compel the wooden guitar to sing. Why was her body all wrong? Soon the angel will make me right. 5 arms, 5 minds, and my inward-facing eye will open. And he left the lands of Zhao Zhang and of Yuan, and he dwelt among the lands of Palomos, Philadelphos, the son of Palomos Soter, and no smoke beacons were left to stand. Heretics broke them and killed them, and he dwelt in the lands of Robert, son of Hugh Carpet,
The stars in the sky numbered 5 to the 5,555th power. Stars shine down on the fourth night. The starlight and firelight scarcely meeting through the billowing smoke. The bonfires burn low. 3 congregants remain to stroke the flame, their voices hoarse and cracked, eyes straining to remain open as bodies slump, collapse to the cold ground. The doors had stood open since midday, and inside, through the billowing smoke, they caught glimpses of their brothers and sisters whose bodies had been made right. The grace and beauty of it, pulling their forms along on their 5 grasping, writhing hands. They no longer had their outward-facing eyes, and their chest had hungry maws, ready to gobble down their deepest desires. Out from the church they crawled, arms stitched into beautiful, pentagonal symmetry. Legs, so obviously extraneous, had been cut free, and the wounds stitched closed by an expert hand. Pitch-black smoke streamed perpetually from the distended mouth on their faces. Hands with grips of iron pulled another inside. And he was removed from the lands of Francois Filin, son of Michael Filin, to dwell in the captivity of 13 kings, and with anguish broke his bonds, and dwelt among the lands of the Trollpler, and he set 25 smoke beacons from ruddy kindling, and their smoke called him from the eyes of the 13 kings thereafter. And there he dwelt until the stars in the sky numbered 5 to the 55,555th power. And he returned to the land of yellow and of red and of white and of black, and taught himself all that he knew. Stars shine down on the 5th night, a black cloud through which the stars can see. The doctor, with no work remaining for him, left the Blackwater shanty church. He thought very little of the place when he arrived, and truly thought little of it after. He found it queer, only, that so many people having such a similar reaction to the pestilence would willingly quarantine themselves in the wilderness like this.
Do No Harm by Gabriel, Jade, and Dr. Cimmerian.
Now, I do want to preface by saying that this one is written a little differently at the beginning. Basically, we have a whole bunch of sheets regarding 049's interactions with a different group of interests known as Marshall, Carter, and Dark. The first paper says RS939-JJ39S-47CS9. Status selling. Demand low. Value $1,850,000 USD or 1,390 GBD, don't know what that is, per subject unit. Availability, unique. Identifier, MC and D's internal vengeance, otherwise known as Plague Doctor internally. Description. Do you have someone in your life that you truly hate? Is death too good for them? You're in luck. MC and D is now offering a wide range of postmodern options. Now really driving home that streak of hatred in your bones. That's the thing, Marshall, Carter, and Dark, LLP. Initial report. Author, Lucas Whitehall. Interest, medium. Date, July 25th, 2018. Identifier, Plague Doctor. Subject, encountered in the Canadian wilderness, several miles from a secluded building. Despite the evidence that the subject had performed alterations on corpses within the building, no other abnormalities were encountered. Once acquired, the subject was found to perform significant alterations on humans and the corpses of humans which it considers quote-unquote sick. A detailed psychological profile has been created, and protocols for convincing the subject that a given human or corpse is sick are being developed. Open file RS939-JJ39S-4ZCS9. Track information. Owner, SCP Foundation. Date, December 10th, 2009. Contained by Foundation. Unclaimed. August 17th, 2017. A subject escaped containment. Saboteurs within the Foundation forces activated in order to mislead the Foundation. On recovery of subject, acquisition team dispatched. Marshall, Carter, and Dark, LLP, claimed him July 25th, 2018. Sale records. Records from July 2018 to November 2018. Month, July 2018. Sold 1 Comments: live human provided, subject performed alterations on its own. August 2018. Sold 1. Live human provided, subject convinced to perform alterations. September 2018. 2. Both corpses provided with request to have them stitched together. Subject failed to comply with request, although subject was convinced to perform standard alterations on both corpses. October 2018. 1. Live human provided client for alterations. Subject refused to perform alterations. Now we are going into the story.
The walls were cream-colored. The floors were a checkerboard mixture of pale green and gray. A man and a doctor stood in the darkness of the corridor. The doctor chuckled softly. "You have a strange sense of humor, Mr. Carter." Mr. Carter and the doctor stood outside of a patient's room. A smell of disinfectants and the sound of beeping equipment were the only interruptions as Mr. Carter composed himself. "I'm not sure I see this as a joke. You take me to this house of death. You parade me down halls teeming with the pestilence. Then you bring me to the room of the only man who is here free from its influence." Mr. Carter cleared his throat and chuckled to himself. "Be that as it may, our client has asked us to ensure the man in that room is cured. If you must, consider him one of your test subjects." "My expertise is in curing the disease, not death." Mr. Carter shifted in place uncomfortably. "When you and your friend escaped the Foundation, he agreed that you would perform certain services for us in exchange for our resources and protection. If that deal is no longer in place..." The words hung on the air for several seconds. "Of course." The doctor reached for the doorknob. "I will need some time alone, then." Mr. Carter nodded along. "Excellent. If you need anything, my men will be outside." The doctor was halfway into the room as Mr. Carter finished speaking. The room was claustrophobic and dark. A frail man lay in a bed against the far wall. Alongside the bed was a small table with a dim lamp and a chair. The doctor walked over to the bed and placed a gloved hand over the patient's forehead. The man startled awake. "Who's there?" the man asked with blank eyes. "I'm your doctor." "Oh, sorry." The patient waved his hand weakly. "You don't sound like my doctor." "He was unable to come. He asked me to check in on you. You don't have much time, I think." "No, I'm sick." "You're not sick. You are merely dying." The long beeps of the heart rate monitor filled the silence. "Where's your family?" The man let out a sigh. The doctor pulled the chair out and sat down next to the bed. "The next few hours are going to be difficult. There's little I can do to alleviate the pain. Would you like me to stay?" The man sniffled slightly and nodded his head. The doctor took the man's hand and sat with him in the silence.